Hello, I'm Jean Pete, and I welcome you back to our show, Better Living. Better Living is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and is sponsored by Homestead Hospice, where commitment to education and premier hospice care helps patients and families through life's most important journey. Thank you for joining me again today. Today I'm here with a repeat guest, and it's always good to have him. Scott Morrison, who is a certified senior advisor, is back with me this morning. And today we are going to talk about private duty home health care, how you can get help in your home. And we have hot off the press new information about a Patient Protection Act. We're going to talk about Bright Star's new Connections program and a research project that the Veterans Administration has is rolling out right now. Is that right, Scott?
Yes, thank you, Jeannie. The VA has funded a research project so that veterans who live with disability and have informal caregivers, meaning spouses, daughters, sons, that sort of thing, could potentially, through qualification, have an occupational therapist come into their home, analyze their needs, and then have a certified aging-in-place specialist builder come in and do home modification. It could be grab bars, it could be super poles, bedside toilets, raised toilet seats, shower chairs, handheld shower attachments, that sort of thing. And the VA would pay for that. And the research is to see, do these assistive devices help the informal caregiver to provide care?
Wow, that's great, because we've had folks on our show in the past who did that. They'd go in, I had a friend, I don't think the company is around anymore, but my friend Dara, you know Dara, who used to go do that. And she's a very informed individual in all things having to do with senior care.
Right.
And so she would go in kind of with her social worker hat on and then go in with the contractor partner, and they would go in and look at what's the disease that's going on, how do we think this is going to progress, and based on that progression and knowledge of the disease process, they could recommend the right types of fittings for that home so that people would be safer and in their own home environment for a longer period of time. So that's basically what the occupational therapist and the senior advisor is doing.
Right, and then the researchers work for the Veterans Administration, and they will then interview the participants to see, first they would go back and there would be a training on how to use these assistive devices. Then secondly, they would follow up after a period of time to get feedback. Did these things help in giving the informal care?
And they're providing it for free. I mean, that's thousands of dollars of savings.
It is, and the test is to see if this is successful, could it possibly roll out on a national level once it's published and what have you.
That's fantastic.
So it's a really good program, and I'd love to share with your listeners the number that they can call to see if they qualify.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it's 404-321-6111, extension 1191. That's 404-321-6111, extension 1191. If you don't get an answer, please simply leave a message, and one of the researchers will give you a call back, and you go through a questionnaire to see if you qualify, and then they do the process.
So is this specific to the Veterans Administration in Georgia? Because we air all over.
It's the VA in Atlanta that is sponsoring this.
Okay.
And they're studying dyads. Dyads are the disabled veteran plus their informal caregiver.
Okay.
And it's to see how they interact and what things can be done to help that informal caregiver give better care and for that veteran to age in place in their home.
So again, would this be some examples of what they might provide for the informal caregiver and the person living at home? A special bathtub that you can walk in and out, or is that not on the list?
I don't know that they have done anything of that regard. There is a limit on the cost per dyad.
Okay.
However, I have seen adjusted toilet paper holders, grab bars, super poles beside the bed to help a disabled veteran get up and down and into their wheelchair, grab bars in the bathroom, in the shower, raised toilets so that it's easier to get up and down and that sort of thing. And they are actively recruiting. They will be recruiting through the end of July, and then the study will run an additional year. We're in year 4 of a 5-year study right now.
Okay. I hadn't heard of that before. And it's for veterans.
Yes, you must be a veteran living with disability, but I don't think the disability has to be associated with your service to the country.
Okay.
So you may be a veteran who is living with dementia, and then your spouse is your caregiver.
Okay.
Or you have some other chronic ailment that causes your disability, and your caregiver is a relative, a neighbor, what have you.
Wow, that's fantastic. So again, can you just give that phone number one more time?
Yes, it's 404-321-6111. And that's extension 1191.
Okay. And Scott's such an advocate for seniors and for helping our communities, but we completely skipped over who you are, who you work with, anything like that. So he was so excited to get this information out to you. We just jumped right into the Veterans Program Research Project. So let's back up for a minute and reintroduce you. I know you're a past guest, and hopefully my listeners remember who you are. But how about a quick introduction?
Sure. I'm Scott Morrison, and I own a company called Bright Star, and we have locations in Duluth, Northeast Atlanta, and Alpharetta, Roswell. Bright Star is a national organization. We have 275 locations nationwide. We have 11 here in Georgia, and I'm associated with 3 of those locations. I am board certified as a senior advisor, a CSA. As such, I'm sort of a ready reference resource for everything to do with our elders. That's not something I charge for. It's just my way of giving back to the community, but I play in this sandbox every single day. So a lot of times when adult children are looking for answers, our culture promotes looking young, and we don't ever consider the fact that we might age, and therefore there's a lot of planning that we should have done that we don't do. Conventionally, we wait until there's a crisis, and then we're scrambling to try to put the pieces together.
All the time.
So that's something that I bring to the table to help folks, whether they're my clients or not, just to connect the dots, because there are a lot of resources out there for our elders, but we don't know where to start.
And it's overwhelming when you're a caregiver too. You can get pulled right into the daily routine, and you don't realize, take a breath for yourself and research. So now we have people that we can connect folks to.
Well, and the latest data that has come out, it is $12 to $13 billion that if these informal caregivers, adult children, spouses, what have you, if they were in the workforce, that's the amount of money they would earn that they're giving up to care for our aging parents or relatives or what have you.
And it's only going to get more prevalent as we all age.
Because now the baby boomers, it started in 2011, and now every day 10,000 people turn 65. And over the next 25, 30 years, there will be 75 million people that will become elders.
And it is a struggle. I mean, I don't think there's anyone that doesn't know someone who's caring for, or many people know folks that are caring for a loved one, whether it be an elderly parent, relative, helping a neighbor. It's just getting more and more prevalent, and really there's not enough support. We talked about an example for someone, a veteran that might meet qualifications for this Veterans Program Research Project would be someone with dementia, whose informal caregiver is their relative. And that's years and years and years of caregiving, and there's not a lot of support out there for them. So this is wonderful.
The period in which you experience that dementia could be anywhere from 2 years to 20 years. About a month and a half ago, I was at the Emory Brain Forum, and they were talking specifically about Alzheimer's. And conventionally, they now find that you have your first plaque or experience of disease 25 years before you show the first symptom. And when you consider that over time, a third of the population is going to develop some form of dementia, many of the people that we interact with every day have it and don't even know it.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, I'm middle-aged. I worry about myself sometimes, but that's a whole nother show for a whole nother day. So I know you're with Bright Star, and it's a national organization. I just want to bring folks back to that for just a minute, because it is a wonderful organization. And the minute I think of Bright Star, I've been working with you for a very, very long time.
Since 2008.
Yeah, but I remember Undercover Boss.
Yes,
right?
We were featured in 2010 on Undercover Boss.
And your CEO.
She went through the whole process, and I think one of her experiences was she was caring for, because Bright Star does private duty in-home care from companion care to skilled nursing any age. And so one of the features was she was caring for 3-year-old quadruplets on a military base in Arizona. And she really had a super respect for that caregiver and the way that he was able to manage those children.
Yeah, and
while Dad was deployed.
It's always good to know who runs a company, and it gives a good sense for what Bright Star is as a company, what her mission is, and how she instills the passion to taking care of folks in the folks that own the Bright Stars throughout the country.
Absolutely. And while many of the states that we operate in do not require that the home care companies be accredited, all Bright Stars as a brand standard are Joint Commission accredited, just like your local hospital. And so therefore, quality improvement, quality assurance, that's all there, and it improves your processes so that you can provide the very best care in a person-centered way to those who need the care.
And just to pull back for a minute on that, because we're in healthcare and sometimes we assume people know all of that and what that means. But when you're reimbursed by the government to provide health care to our communities, you typically have to go through either a certification process, which is grueling, or an accreditation process. And accreditors out there are Joint Commission or CHAP, and there's lots of other ones as well. For Bright Star and the type of health care you provide, which is private duty, that's not reimbursed by the government. That's a private pay type of situation.
It is private pay for the home care portion,
for the home care,
or it's long-term care insurance. But on the home health side, many Bright Stars are providers for non-Medicare home health. And I teach a class at a mega church. It's called Caring for Our Elders, a Guide for Adult Children. And one of the most aha moments that we always have is when we explain the difference between home health and home care. Home health is your health insurance. That's Medicare, Blue Cross, Coventry, CareCentrix, United, Humana, that sort of thing. And they're going to send out a skilled professional, a nurse, a physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, social worker, what have you, to help you in transitioning home from a medical event. These activities are based on doctor's orders. These activities conventionally always end. They end because you got better, you failed to improve, or you used up all the benefit that your health insurance offered. On the other side of the spectrum is home care. That's bathing, grooming, toileting, dressing, cooking, cleaning, transportation, that sort of thing. And it's either private pay, long-term care insurance, the Veterans Administration aid and attendance benefit, or one of the Medicaid waiver programs. And here in Georgia, we have multiple Medicaid waiver programs.
And that's going to vary state by state.
Right, it varies state by state because that's a dual program with both federal and state funds. And each state gets to determine how they roll out the Medicaid program.
So thank you for that, because I love having you on the show, because as my brain starts thinking, he already is going there. You're a very easy guest to interview. So we wanted to talk about the difference between skilled home health and private duty, non-Medicare related home care, which, like you said, is either companionship or assistance with housekeeping and transportation.
And your individual ADLs or activities of daily living. If you hear that phrase, ADL, you think the caregiver touches me. So that's your bathing, grooming, toileting, dressing, help walking, or feeding.
Okay, great. And let's talk a little bit about your transportation program.
Sure.
And is this is countrywide, or does it vary state by state as well?
It varies by location, but many of us do provide transportation, especially if it's in conjunction with private duty care. So let's give an example. Let's say that we're providing care in the home for an elder and it's a doctor's office visit day. Then as long as they can transfer from a wheelchair, say, into the caregiver's car, or the caregiver can drive their car, they can make that appointment. If they want to go to the beauty shop, if they want to go shopping, go to church, any of those social activities, we can make that happen as part of the care plan.
That's a wonderful program, because I know through my travels, I worry about our elders and being shut in.
Transportation is one of the number one issues going forward, recognized at the federal level, at the state level. The Atlanta Regional Commission here locally recently did area surveys, and transportation is a huge issue going forward. I'm part of the National Aging in Place Council, and we do a lot of education about, so you want to age in place, what does that look like? And it's important that you plan ahead, not only to have a dwelling that's suitable for aging in place, finances that are suitable for aging in place, but then are you close to your service providers, your doctor, your pharmacist, your grocery store, that sort of thing, and do you have a way of getting there and returning home? Huge issue right now.
And again, going back to what you said about most people wait till the crisis occurs.
Right.
If we can make a difference today and just get people thinking about how to plan for their future so they can be as independent as possible for as long as possible. And that could make all the difference in the world. Not living in that 2-story home where they don't have access and can't get anywhere easily.
Exactly.
It's hard to make the change, but once you do, your whole rest of your life is so much better and higher quality.
Well, if by the time you're on, and the average metric is by age 65, if you have sat with a a professional, financial professional, or an elder care attorney, and just ask one question: what if I live to be 100? What's that going to look like, and how am I going to pay for it? Make those adjustments early on, and sometimes the solution is to acquire long-term care insurance. And then have your dwelling analyzed. Do I have a master on main? Do I have a full bath on the main? Could my future power chair or wheelchair get through the narrow doorways or not? Do I need to make adjustments? If I have a finished basement, do I have a sidewalk that power chair could go around so I can access my basement? And then you need to and also, where are your light sockets or your electrical sockets, and does your washer and dryer front load, and are they on a pedestal so that you're not living with osteoporosis and trying to get the things
Holy
that
cow,
stick
you don't
down
even
into
think
the
of
bottom.
that.
So all of those sorts of things go together. And then how accessible am I to my primary care physician, the hospital, any specialist, my pharmacy, that sort of thing. You put all of those together and put them aside, having planned it, and then you can go back and play in our culture, which says you need to look young.
Then we can get to everyday living again.
But if you think about it, if you've planned that out, Jeannie, and any time you have a medical event and you're now at the hospital and people are deciding what are your options, if you've planned that out, in your playing cards is the option of going home.
That's right.
Whereas if you don't have a master on main, you've got stairs, you're not accessible to anything, don't have transportation, I can assure you a move is in your future. I've served over 4,500 clients since we opened our doors in 2008. I have yet to meet one that did not want to remain independent and age in place. That requires planning.
Right. And it may be, where do your children live? I know you want to be where you are, but to live a quality life in the future, you may need to get closer to your kids.
Absolutely. 50 years ago, we all lived 5 miles from mom and dad, and now we're lucky if we live in the same state.
Right.
And so that sort of planning is critical. And also the spiritual nurturing, whatever your your religious belief, you need to have that in place so that you can have connection to that and you can nurture your spirit as well, especially if you're living with chronic ailment.
And the closer you are to the doctor and to all of the grocery store, anywhere you need to go, the more likely you are to be able to get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, too, when elders are living with chronic ailment, we will go in, and because the adult children are wanting to take away the keys to the car, sometimes we can partner with them and say, well, keep your car, but let us be the driver. And now you can go anywhere you want to go, when you want to go, how you want to go, and we'll take you as part of your conventional care plan, where we're coming in the home and we're also helping with laundry and meal preparation, and if you need it, bathing, grooming, that sort of thing.
Do we want to talk about typical costs? And I know that's a terrible question because it's always a range and it depends on what folks are. But I like to give some indication of what people might have to.
Right. And it depends on what sort of shifts the individuals work. You do want to work with an agency that is licensed, that does employ their employees as W-2 employees, and that does bond them, insure them for professional liability, and most importantly, insure them for workers' compensation. If they're in your home and they're helping to lift you and they hurt their back, you want a workers' compensation insurance covering that. So, but costing, the costs range anywhere from, on the low end, $18 to $19. On the high end for skilled nursing, it could be private pay, $125 a visit for a registered nurse to come and do something. We do a lot of private duty also for foreign nationals. They're here. They don't have a U.S. health insurance.
Oh, yeah.
They have a medical event, and they've got to convalesce at their adult children's home before they can go back to the country of origin. And so frequently we'll do that sort of thing on a private duty basis, just as if they had health insurance.
And nowadays you're going to be, that money can be well served, because if you end up in the hospital, you could be getting thousands and thousands of dollars in bills anyway.
Absolutely.
Versus getting the help that you need, making sure you don't fall.
Sometimes you could get you can get nursing home level of services in your own home. And so that means physical therapy, occupational therapy, those sorts of things. And so that's a service that we provide that is sort of a sweet spot for us. We care for those many individuals who live with medical fragility.
Let's give a contact number for folks who want to get in touch with Brightree here locally in Georgia, but also because we air in other markets. Is there a national Bright Star phone number, or they could call you?
The
website
and is www.brightstarcare, BRIGHTSTARCARE.com, www.brightstarcare.com. And on the landing page, it will say find a location. All you have to do is plug in your zip code, and you will be transferred to the face page of the individual agency that serves your area.
That's great. And you're all over the country.
We're all over the country. We're also in Canada, the UK, and Australia.
We have to take a quick break, but stay with us, because when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about some of those services that we touched upon that you can get in your home. People don't know you can get this care in the home. And then we want to also talk about the new Connections program and let you all know about the Patient Protection Act that just passed this month, or last month, but very recently. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Jean Pete, and I welcome you back to our show, Better Living. Better Living is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and is sponsored by Homestead Hospice, where commitment to education and premier hospice care helps patients and families through life's most important journey. Thanks for staying with us. I'm still here with Scott Morrison, who is with Bright Star. What's the official name? Bright Star Home? Bright Star Care?
Bright Star Care.
Okay. And Scott is a certified senior advisor, and he is here informing us about all the latest, greatest news about home health, home care, private duty, and helping you if you are taking care of a loved one in the home. And during the break, we were talking about the definition of elder. We're focusing today on elder care in the home. And Scott has a beautiful definition that we wanted to share with you before we get to our next topics, which is the New Connections Program, the Patient Protection Act, and more about what kind of services are available in the home.
Thank you, Jeannie. Somewhere along the way in our culture, we have drifted away from respect for our elders. Personally, I think that each time we see an elder, it reminds us which way we're going, so we tend to not want to engage them. And yet, we're all heading that direction. And Barry Barkin, who's with the Live Oak Project, put together this wonderful definition of an elder. The term elder is a term of respect. An elder is a person who's still growing, still a learner, still with potential, and whose life continues to have within it promise for and connection to the future. An elder is still in pursuit of happiness, joy, and pleasure, and her or his birthright to these remain intact. Moreover, an elder is a person who deserves respect and honor, and whose work it is to synthesize wisdom from long life experience and formulate this into a legacy for future generations.
And I think we're missing out in this generation. Like you said earlier, we're lucky if we live in the same state as our parents. So our children are growing up far away. You have to take a trip to see grandma or grandpa. And the wisdom that they have to instill, it's just a fact of life. But it is a sad fact of life because we're missing all of that wisdom.
Over the past 7.5 years, I cannot tell you the number of times that I was personally enriched from simply sitting and talking with my elders. And I have had business coaches who were 94. And it has been very rewarding because they were able to share with me their life experiences. And I think that as a culture, we need to turn to them. In other cultures, they always turn to their elders for sage wisdom. And we tend to think of, we're going to place you with your peer group in this facility, and we're going to visit you on holidays and your birthday. And other than that, you're going to remain with your peer group. And I will tell you that with 74 million people becoming elders, there aren't enough facilities to place them. So we need a culture change. We need to perceive the fact that we will all, every single one of us will be a care partner to someone who happens to be an elder. They may be your neighbor. They may be someone you go to church with, but all of us are going to be care partners to these folks. And it's important that while we're providing help with their disabilities, that we are gleaning from them all of this enrichment from their life experience.
At Homestead, we've come up with a program. It's called the Junior Book Club. And we connect elders with preteens, young teenagers who come in, and they could even be younger than that, who come in and read books to the folks in these facilities. And you think you're providing a service for the seniors, but the kids are getting so much back, no matter what they're going through. And teens, you don't always listen to mom, you don't listen to dad, you think you know everything. You got all kinds of issues that really aren't that big, but they seem like the biggest mountain in the country. And you sit with a senior who loves you, who's smiling at you, who's holding your hand, who's so patient, who's so grateful to have you there, just a young face reading to you, and watching this program and what it's done, both for the seniors, but also for these children that are going in. We're connecting them again. We're connecting them back to the wisdom that they wouldn't get otherwise.
There's a huge push nationwide because of the sheer volume or number of elders to find housing solutions. And in some states, they have worked with single moms who live next door to elders. And the elders act as grandparents to the young kids, and the moms do shopping and meal preparation and other things for the elders. And it's a great symbiotic relationship, and one model that deserves further development.
Absolutely, because, I'm a single mom. I have help. I have family here, and I have Alan, but it's a lot of work, and it's difficult. And the more people that we can pull in to help us, we're living in the moment. I've never raised a teenager before. So every issue seems like it's a huge issue to me. I want to make sure to be the right parent at that right moment. And what a comfort it is to have somebody who's been there, done that, gone through it, made their mistakes, can give you that wisdom. We're only helping our entire future society by pulling that together. I'm encouraged that that's even being considered.
Yeah, it's outstanding.
So let's talk about your Connections program.
Sure. Bright Star has developed a formal training program for care partners to care for those who live with dementia or Alzheimer's. You'll notice my choice of words. I never use the word diagnosed with, afflicted with, suffering from anything. It is our belief that no matter what chronic ailment you're living with, you're still living
That's
with
right.
it. And so when we use dialogue like suffering from, and especially in the presence of the person who lives with it, we're opening the door for them to suffer. And so if you look at it from the aspect of they're still living, they still have something to contribute, it bodes well for their outcomes. So we have developed a program called Connections, and our caregivers go through intense training, and we try to emphasize the heterogeneity of dementia, meaning that if you've seen one person with dementia, you have seen one person with dementia. You cannot cast a dragnet because you hear that word Alzheimer's, Lewy body, vascular dementia, that every person is the same. Mm-hmm. And so they need individualized, person-centered care plans. And we do detailed life histories on these individuals so that our caregivers, allow them the opportunity to be well known. And that way, there may be some simple pleasure that needs to happen every single day for someone living with dementia or Alzheimer's, and then we incorporate that into our care plan so that that does happen. And it's something as simple as having an afternoon cup of tea, or watching your favorite program, or going for a walk. And through the care plan, we're able to enrich these folks and allow them to have a life that's worth living. One of the anecdotal examples is we have a client, and she is living with late middle stage Alzheimer's. Still lives with her husband, and her husband only has some ambulation issues. He has no cognitive issues. The family was bringing in fantastic food every day for them to eat, and suddenly she quit eating. The family brought us in because the dad said, I'm not going into assisted living, and she's not leaving me. We're staying here. And so they brought us in. Well, during my life history, I found out that this woman used to be a chef. Mm-hmm. So we went back to cooking, and we bring her in the kitchen, and she helps stir something every time we cook. Now she sits down at the dinner table, and she eats ravenously, and she's put on a lot of the weight that she had lost. Because our caregiver comes daily, she looks forward to her friend coming over, and she went from being frumpy and unengaged to getting up every morning and putting on her makeup and getting ready for her day. Also, as a humorous aside, I found out that throughout her entire adult life, she enjoyed a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon every day at 5 o'clock. Well, alcohol doesn't mix with the Alzheimer's drugs. So we took an empty wine bottle, filled it with grape juice, and she has a glass of wine every day at 5 o'clock. This lady has a life worth living, and it's all through doing a person-centered care plan. Our mission statement through our Connections program is to provide every client with dementia the individualized care and support they need to enjoy optimal health and emotional well-being, living their best days, maintaining connections to what matters most to them. Culturally, adult children, I see it all the time, we think that because someone becomes an elder or lives with a certain chronic ailment, that they lose the inalienable right they have as citizens of the United States to make bad decisions. We want to superimpose our will on top of them, and it couldn't be further from the truth. the individual, it's like I have adult children say, you got to make my mama take her medicine. Well, we'll circle back, we'll reinvent, we'll try 9 ways from Sunday, but at the end of the day, she's got a right to say no, unless a judge has granted conservatorship in which someone else gets to determine. And so that's a tough thing to swallow for a lot of adult children as they're trying to orchestrate, being a soccer mom, running kids everywhere, and then my mom who lives with me, living with Alzheimer's, stays up all night because her circadian clock is off and she doesn't realize it's nighttime.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult. And right there is why, when I've worked in home care and hospice for a long time, and oftentimes just getting the agencies in to help you to have those conversations with you and your families. Hey, look, we need to gather the whole family together, extended family maybe, neighbors maybe. Let's see how we can work out a program of who's going to be here on what nights overnight to help you so you can still function, so you can still go to work. And what nights are open, then those are the nights you bring in private duty. But unless you have that outside agency in, it's a very hard thing to pull together.
I sit on the board of directors of the Scleroderma Foundation here, Georgia chapter. And that is a brutal autoimmune disease.
My neighbor has it. It's terrible.
And often when I go to the support groups, I will ask new members, what were you doing prior to being diagnosed with scleroderma? And you'd be surprised at how many people say, well, for the past 12 years, I was waiting on my husband who had heart failure. For the past 10 years, I was caregiving to my wife who lived with Alzheimer's. The negative CDC data says that the negative effects on your autoimmune system from being an informal, unpaid caregiver remain in effect for 3 full years after you're no longer a caregiver. And so it's dangerous work, and you need your respite. You need to go charge your batteries. If you like to tee it up, go play golf. You want to get your hair done, go do that. Get your nails done. Whatever it is that makes you happy, go and recharge your batteries, allowing someone like us to come in and serve that individual so that you know they're in a safe environment, and go and charge your batteries so you can come back and take that baton and run with it.
And what happens to the loved one that you're so valiantly trying to care for if something happens to you because you're not taking care of yourself? All your efforts are not helping because you can't be there for them anymore.
You would probably be shocked at the number of referrals we receive from funeral directors, and you're like, hey, Scott, that seems a little late in the process. Well, it's the caregiver that passed because they started staying up all night, which isn't proper for an able-minded individual, and then their immune system got compromised, then they contracted some chronic ailment, and then they passed from it. And the family comes down from New York, and they're like, well, who's going to take care of Dad now? And the funeral directors are saying, call this guy.
Yeah, so, it's never easy to try to come up with extra money that's not in your budget.
Right.
But Scott and I have lived this for many, many years. Together, I've known Scott since 2008. And we see it over and over and over again. And it's worth it. It's worth it to plan for it. And it's worth it, if you haven't had time to plan for it, to pull an agency like Scott and Bright Star in so they can work with you, your family, your extended family, your neighbors, get that net of care and support for you, the primary caregiver, so you can get your rest and you can be there for your loved one a lot longer.
Doing your homework is tantamount to success. There are multiple different types of providers out there. Hospitals are encouraged by insurance to discharge you once you are stable, and sometimes that means you have to go to rehabilitation. You should be familiar with the rehab facilities in your area because not all of them are going to have a bed at the time that you need them. And you need to be familiar with them so you're not running through Atlanta traffic trying to get around from place to place. I do encourage you to visit them before you accept assigning your loved one to their care. And even the skilled nursing facilities, be familiar with those because at some point, many people will wind up in a nursing home setting. And so having that an idea of where they are located, what they provide, that sort of thing is also tantamount to success. But getting with that financial planner, that elder care attorney, by the time you're average age 65, and mapping these things out will make it easier on your family. It's just like the advanced directives. I have a friend that sits on the board at Gwinnett Medical Center, and there's a very low percentage of people that come in there for surgery that actually have an advanced directive for health care. It's like we don't want to think about it.
That's right.
But putting it out there relieves the pressure off of your loved ones. If you can't express your wishes, they're like, hey, I know what he wants. And, be able to present that to the licensed professionals.
Or, God forbid, somebody has to make that decision for you, and there's other family members that disagree with that decision. What just happened to that caregiver who's trying so hard to do the right thing, God forbid something should happen to you. They live with that for the rest of their lives, and they live with the rift between them. I've seen this too, and I'm sure you have, Scott, between them and their loved ones. There's infighting going on. If there's only one thing you remember from today's show, put an advance directive in place. And let people know your wishes.
That is for anyone over 18, because once you're an adult, the doctors and hospitals don't necessarily have to listen to your relatives. And so if you put it in writing, because we all take a chance every day, we hope that somebody doesn't cross the center line as we're driving down the road and hit us head on. And all of a sudden we're living in a very complex medical world, and we want to have that directive out there. It's also important you give it to the people that you've empowered to go and represent you. During my class I teach, I'll ask how many people have power of attorney for their elders. A lot of people raise their hands. Okay, well, where is that? Well, it's in my mom's safe deposit box. Okay, so the document you need to get into the safe deposit box is in the safe deposit box. Well, I hadn't thought of that. So it's very important that
man, that's true.
That you publish that out there and get it in the hands of those folks. And they're never going to use it unless you're in a position not to express your wishes.
Unless you're in a position not. That's right.
So they're not going to just pull it out helter-skelter and say, because the first line of defense is you go to the client or patient themselves and ask, what is it that you want?
Right. You're not giving up any control.
No.
It's only if you can't control what's happening
Absolutely.
to you.
And here in Georgia, I think it's called 5 Wishes. You can pull it off the internet. It doesn't require to be notarized. I think you just need 2 wishes. So everybody should do that. All the churches should have a function and then have a big church-wide dinner and get everybody to get this document in place.
I love having you here, Scott, because this is such important information, and you're as passionate as I am, and this is near and dear to my heart. Look, I've worked in home health. I've worked in hospice for a lot of years, and there's some sad stories out there where somebody is in a nursing home. They don't have anybody. We know they need hospice. We know they need comfort. We know they need extra hands to help them. Because if you're a nurse at a nursing station, and I'm an advocate of facilities, I think they get beat up by the media. These people are in healthcare because they're nurturers and they do the best they can. But they're one nurse for a whole unit. So
absolutely. And skilled nursing facilities are as regulated as nuclear power plants.
Oh, very.
There was a article that came out, a publication in 2013, and it was a gerontology student who interviewed 8,000 nursing home workers across the country, asking them, what does perfect care look like? And over 80% of them responded, passing inspection. And so in those situations where you're so regulated, it's easy for people to fall through the cracks. And so if you are an adult child or caring for a spouse and they do go into facility, it's important that you stay on top of that care and that you hold them accountable to provide the very best care for your loved one.
And you need to have your wishes known and have a power of attorney and have a legal guardian, somebody to speak on your behalf when you can't. Because then when those decisions need to be made, nobody can make them on your behalf, and it's a process. So by the time they go through the process, it's too late. It's too late, and I've watched very sad last days because we couldn't get in there and we couldn't help. So again, one last thing to remember from today's show, and I hope you remember how wonderful Scott and Bright Star is, but if there's only one thing, that advance directive is of utmost importance.
Absolutely, and also to put in a plug for hospice in general. So many individuals culturally see hospice as a quote-unquote coffin nail, and I can tell you it's anything but. You do qualify for hospice services a full 6 months in theory before your theoretical demise. And it's important because you get a lot of services with that. And also you get a hospital bed, you get the incontinence products, you get your medications paid for, you get visits by social workers, clergy. You get all the support that you need for that transition. And so many people wait till 72 hours before they go on hospice and miss out on all these benefits that are available out there.
And help for the caregiver.
For the caregivers, and they follow the families for a full year after you're no longer here, as well as being able to go through this process. I have seen clients go on hospice, rally, and come off of hospice. Mm-hmm. So it's not a finite end all, but you got all the support that you need.
Well, we never have enough time, and I think we've touched on a lot of topics, but I do want to get to the Patient Protection Act because that's a recent development. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. At the urging of the National Aging in Place Council, the Home Care Association of America Georgia chapter, the Georgia Association of Community Care Providers, Leading Age, and other advocates for elder issues, we successfully got this past Georgia legislative session, House Bill 183 approved, and on May 5th, Governor Deal signed it into law. It is called the Home Care Patient Protection Act. And what it does is it is now forbidden for home care agencies to use subcontracted individuals that are not licensed to provide care. And that kind of evens the playing field, and it makes sure that everyone employs those individuals, that they undergo continuing education, and that they now insure them, so that it's protecting elders who don't understand that one agency might employ subcontract individuals and not carry work comp or professional liability or that sort of thing.
Or background checks, too.
Or background checks, and then another agency does. And so this kind of evens that playing field and gets all home care providers to start providing caregivers that are employees.
And that's great, because we've talked about that before. There was a vast difference in these companies that were out there, and people didn't realize it. Right. But that's just Georgia?
That was just Georgia. Every state's different. Some of them have, different laws and so forth. But there were 12 different elder issues that were passed through the Georgia legislation this year. Also, there was some real teeth put into the new elder abuse laws that empower the local district's attorney to go out and pursue those who are preying on our elders financially, or stealing from them, or taking medications they shouldn't have, or that sort of thing.
Well, we're headed in the right direction in Georgia. So again, Scott, thank you for being with me. And if you have any need at all, go to www.brightstarcare.com, or you can call
678-646-5400. That's 678-646-5400. I'm Scott Morrison with Brightstar.
Thanks for being with us today, Scott. I'm Jeannie Pete. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day and week ahead. And listen here, same time next week and every week. Homestead Hope Foundation is your resource for a healthy life. God bless.